I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. A lot of insurance needs. And they do a great job of saving you money wherever they can. Because customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. All right, so let's bring in the outstanding, incomparable, and our good friend, Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome back.
As always, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, a question I always ask you before free agency begins is always about the setup of what free agency can then mean to how a team drafts. Based on what the Steelers did in free agency, how do you think that shapes their draft?
I think that the obvious, I don't know if you want to call it priority, but I think the draft can kind of be the result of what they did in free agency, depending on what you're looking for. In the Steelers' case, I think one priority for them, and they knew this when they let Larry Ogunjobi go, was they wanted to get better along their offensive line, and better in some cases means younger. You can find younger players in free agency to help fill in, but typically you're not finding, an heir apparent to a player like Cam Hayward out in free agency. So my thought would be they would want to invest a premium pick in a defensive tackle, and they felt pretty good about the ability of one falling to them at 21 overall. They were in on the pursuit of Jonathan Allen, a player that I know from back in the day, that they were definitely very interested in drafting him. I think that was back in 2018 when he was draft eligible. The Minnesota Vikings signed him. The Steelers weren't able to get him. I think, though, they still wanted to add a bit to their defensive line. And in that, it's an example of kind of one hand almost washing the other. But you need to kind of see how free agency is going to play out, what happens out there. Because who knows? When it opens up, depending on the strength of the market for a player, he might go for a bit cheaper than they would have thought he would have. They'd be happy to pay him, what he was looking for. That's a player they didn't expect to sign available to them. That might alter their draft plans a little bit. But by and large, they have kind of an overall perspective of where they want their team to grow, and that includes free agency as well as the draft. Now, neither of those things are anything that you can say for certain, this is what we're going to do. But this is what they're aiming for, and they adjust based on whatever it is that comes up. They do want to have any major holes patched before they head into the draft, giving them more ability to look down the road a little bit more as opposed to this coming year. But the roster is fluid. They always add and subtract throughout the year. They've got a 90-man limit right now. They're going to sign a bunch more players. They still have the cash and the cap space to be able to do that. So what they're looking in the draft is really just to get the best players that they can to come in, not necessarily for this season, But for 2 years, 3 years down the line, where are they going to be? Your younger players, the guys that, Mike Tomlin would kind of classify as the ones that play the entire preseason games for the first couple of years, they're going to be the future foundation of the team, and they're still building that out. Those younger players are still developing, even as they bring more of them in. They didn't get, for example, they didn't get anything from Roman Wilson last season. He's going to be a player that, hopefully can fill in a spot and play a fairly productive role for them this year. He's somebody they counted on probably more for 2-3 years down the line as opposed to his rookie year. Does that mean they need to address the receiver position again? With the what seems to be the likely departure of George Pickens after this season, I'd imagine they'd probably want to, whether that's with their typical second or third round pick like they often do with receivers. Remains to be seen, but it would seem to me that they could get one in round 3, which is their second pick in this draft, pending they don't trade anything up. So with that, you want to map out a plan overall to address your future needs within the draft and more of your immediate needs and depth with free agency. But there's a pretty thin line between those two things, and you're looking to capitalize with the premium picks as early as you can to get guys that can play right away.
Right, and that's going to be important moving forward. So here we are on the 8th. Draft's a couple of weeks away. Is that essentially the timetable on any Aaron Rodgers decision, pro or con?
That's kind of what I figured. I would honestly say the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that he would sign. I would think even Aaron Rodgers would feel wrong about taking that long to let him know that he was retiring, or he just simply didn't want to sign with the Steelers. I think he would have come to that decision a little bit quicker. So my guess would be, leading up to the draft, we'll hear about it. He has his reasons. I could speculate probably more pessimistically than optimistically why he's doing that. But it's truthfully, they're not playing next week. They don't need their quarterback right now. So in the grand scheme, it's annoying, but it's not detrimental to a large degree. Let's see what happens, though. I'm not shutting the door on it, but it would seem to me more likely than not that he's signing with the team the longer that it plays out. And I would say, the day before round 1 starts would probably be a real deadline, because if that's the case, the Steelers might need to go out and get a starting quarterback in the draft. That could change, philosophically everything they're trying to do. I don't think that's the case, though. So I think they'll get him, and I wouldn't rule out quarterback, a position that they look at, if they could get one that perhaps falls in value in round 1. Maybe execute some type of trade to get into round 2 to take one. Wouldn't surprise me if they go quarterback with one of those premium spots. But I think Rodgers is the plan to be their starting quarterback this season.
As you mentioned, as of right now, they only have one pick on day 2. How do you reevaluate day 2 once round 1 is over with, based on all the picks?
I think it will obviously depend on who was taken, but I think to some degree you kind of look at the diminishing level of who's available. That kind of reassesses the value of it. I don't know if I should say this in Penn State country, but to me, I think a great example is Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah.
I think Pat Freiermuth, or excuse me, not even Pat Freiermuth, Jesse James was the guy that I was thinking of. Either one of them, though, they were players that were taken maybe a little bit earlier than some people thought they were going to be taken, but there wasn't anything after them. And in both of those years, I forget when Jesse James was taken, 2017, 2016, somewhere in there. Yeah. They absolutely needed to get a tight end. They really wanted to prioritize the development of a tight end. And James was in that year, he was the last one. I don't think another one was taken until the 7th round after him in the 5th. They needed to get him. A lot of people said he's probably not worth that high of a pick, but it's a position they wanted to fill. It's a role they wanted to fill. It's a player they felt comfortable with. I think definitely exceeded the value of that pick in his time in the NFL. He played for a long time in the NFL. He's a very serviceable player. Mm-hmm. Freiermuth, a lot of people said second round was probably too high for him for what they were going to be. What people don't understand, the Steelers didn't have a 3-down tight end on their roster at that point. The cap space that they did have, which was limited considerably by two things. One, the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger, which meant to them they've got $40 million against the cap for a quarterback that isn't going to play for them, and the post-pandemic salary cap, payback that came that season. They were really limited, and they had three positions they absolutely had to get to play and play a lot. It was running back, which they took first in the first round with Najee Harris, then tight end, who was Freiermuth in the second round, and then unfortunately the Kendrick Green experience going in the third round as a starting center. So at that point, that was a unique draft for the Steelers looking back on it. But the value of the position, and people will often say, well, just take the best player available. That's arbitrary anyway. Your best player available is not my best player available, and it has to depend on team need. You can't just draft the top of Mel Kiper's board in every single round. You're not going to balance out your team for that season or for the future. So depending on what happens in the first round or what they're able to do, and they're also looking to trade up, trade down, whatever might come up. They want to address certain positions. They're looking to fill certain positions, and if these players are available in these rounds, they'll look to take them. So it really depends, I think, on what is going to fall to them at 21 to kind of set everything up. And it's a polar opposite draft from last year. 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first 12 picks. This year, there might be one in the first 12 picks. There might be one in the first 20 picks. If it happens to be the case, I don't think that it will, but it's not entirely impossible. If Shedeur Sanders falls to 21, I would think the Steelers would be interested. I can't say that's probably going to happen, and I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans aren't going to be happy to hear that. But if that's the case, though, I think you change your plan and kind of say, look, we didn't expect this to happen. And at the same time, I feel, and you and I have talked about this a lot, Steve, I think this happened with Troy Fautanu last year. I don't think they expected to take a tackle at 20 overall or wherever they were. But the run on quarterbacks was a lot more significant than people thought that it would be, and that knocked some players back. And I think with that, Fautanu, a player in my mind, was much better than 20, 21, 22 overall. I forget where he was taken. He should have been a top 15 guy. You want to capitalize on that when you have that opportunity. So that's kind of, simply put, what it means is you have to let the draft come to you, and from there kind of see, what your needs are and what fits best with where you're selecting in each round. And the last round and everybody before that sets up where you are for your next pick.
Yeah, and again, to me, it's always about, what do I need? And maybe I'm playing a little chess about what I may need a year from now. When does that enter into the conversation?
That's the interesting question, and people always say this. To me, without getting too in the weeds with this, it's the draft is a science and an art. But the thing is, what people need to understand is you can't compare one draft to the next draft. The dynamic part of it is the players, not the teams. You don't know what's available year in and year out. And, I know that everybody knows that, but that has a significant impact on everything that you're doing. You can't plan and prepare for something to have a strategy every single year when the parts are always different. Right. That's like planning on a race that you want to do these things in your car, but you drive a different car every time. You're not able to have kind of a static dynamic in place to plan on. So what they want to do and what's available is dependent upon their team now and where they want their team to be. That, though, when you put it all into the draft, is completely dependent on who's available. If there are only 2 draftable tight ends available, you either get one of those tight ends or you're going to draft a guy that, your scouts tell you isn't even worth the draft pick. And things like that have happened, and they do happen quite often. A player, just because he plays this position, and he's, again, not to rip on Mel Kiper, but just because he's 6th on Mel Kiper's big board for the position does not mean that he's worth an NFL contract. That's the scout's job to determine. So they have to look at the whole picture. What does this class look like? What does it look like next year? What does free agency look like next year? There are pro scouts, the ones in the organization that are scouting other teams, other players who are already in the league. They're the ones that you're looking for free agency. Just keeping files on guys, knowing that you scouted them at one point, staying updated on who they are in case an opportunity ever comes up to sign them. And you have your college scouts; those are the ones who obviously are scouting college. That's built more for the draft. You put all those notes together, and you get a sense of what's coming, what's going to be available in the future, and that has to play into your decision as well. And it goes up against the idea that there's a limited, a finite amount of resources at each of these positions. Tight end 4 in 2024 does not mean tight end 4 in 2025. It's not the same player. You don't know exactly where it's going to be, and you have to make decisions based on a dynamic environment, and that makes it a lot more, artistic than anything else. What's your best guess that's coming up? Where do you think you'll be to get a player like this? What does this position group look like in the future? There's a lot that you have to calculate, and that's the stuff a general manager is constructing, and your scouting department is really what kind of drives the engine of all of that. And it's a matter of how you're evaluating them and how accurate you are based on the amount of time and work that you've put in to getting to know that player, understanding their game, and kind of figuring out who and where this player might fit in with what you're trying to do.
Yeah. When you look at the draft, when you're watching it, how many notes are you taking and so forth when it comes to the draft on draft day itself?
It's funny you say that. I was just talking to my staff. And one thing I was telling them is, first and foremost, don't be a scout, because you're not.
Right.
If you want to accurately report what's going on, you need to know the basics of the player. And what might be the most important thing is their name and where they went to school. Know who they are. Get familiar with who they are, where they fit in with the team that you're reporting on. Because here's what's going to happen. I think you've heard me use this euphemism before, but Joe Sweatsock is your average reader. They don't know who the guy is when he's drafted. They don't remember who he is in August. What they want to know are the basics. They don't want to know about his laser rocket arm or all these scouting cliches or anything like that. Does this guy, in a general sense, does this guy help my team win a Super Bowl? That's what Joe Sweatsock wants to know. So give him the basics. How does he fit in? Does this work? What do other people say about him? What do you think about him? You're looking to give general notes. So in that sense, you're taking those general notes, but you need to look at it from a 10,000-foot level, not as if you're writing this for a general manager to read, which ironically is not the type of scouting report that gets submitted to a general manager anyway. Don't overdo it. Don't try to oversell the guy. Even the guys that do this for a living, the guys that really obsess over it, and the ones that make it kind of a badge of honor to show off how much tape they watch, they're probably the only ones that remember every single player that was drafted. And it's because there are a lot of players that you just don't know in the NFL. It's a very big league. There are a lot of players who are out there. Most of them, their biggest highlight of their career is draft day when they get drafted, because they have a spotlight for about 18 seconds on ESPN. That's probably the only amount of time they'll ever get. Right. Don't try to overdo it. Do they fit in? Does this fit in with the team's general plan? Do they add to the depth chart? And a fair question after probably round 4, will they make the team? Are they going to be on the team? I'd say, reasonably, if we were to guess, the highest draft pick who will get cut is probably in the 4th round. Mm-hmm. And 4th round tends to be kind of a medical or character concern round. It's sort of the higher ceiling but very low floor type of prospect that gets drafted in the 4th round. Beyond that, though, there are 5th, 6th, 7th round guys that get cut all the time. They might not even make the team. That's half the draft. So you can't put too much into really truly analyzing who all the players are before you see them on an NFL field. And that's absolutely not to say 6th round picks can't make it in the NFL. In fact, you talk to scouts, they'll tell you the 6th round is kind of like, these are going to be solid pro level players. They just don't have any, high upside. They're guys that can play. Typically, they're guys that can play right now. They can be special teams components, deep roster types of guys.
Right.
They value the 6th round maybe even more than they do the 5th. But overall, you're looking to get, from a writing perspective, you're looking to get a sense of who they are, and you want to communicate that out to the audience as best you can without overwhelming them with a bunch of scouting jargon and misrepresenting the audience as somebody that works in professional football. They just want to know who the dude is and whether or not he can help them win a Super Bowl.
We brought up the scouts a couple of times here. The Ravens include the scouts in the room when they draft. Do you know how the Steelers approach that with the scouts?
The Steelers really keep that under lock and key. I know in the past their college and pro scouting directors have been in the room, but everything I've always heard was that it was really kind of back in the day at least, it was kind of a Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin type of thing. They involved the pro scouting coordinator, the college scouting coordinator when needed, and the position coaches. They listened to the input of the coordinator and the position coaches for what they needed, because they all give them different assignments of what to scout and what to look for. Some coaches feel particularly strong about this guy or that guy, but we don't hear about the ones that they feel strongly about that don't get drafted. I know famously there was a bit of there was some consternation of what happened inside the draft room when the Steelers had their 3rd round comp pick for Mike Wallace, when Mike Wallace signed back with the Dolphins back in 2014 or 2013, whatever that was. They got the pick in 14. Their 3rd round pick going into it, to the point where his name was on the card, was somebody different than who they drafted. So there was some confusion in there. This is a true story. I've heard this from several people. Martavis Bryant's name was on the card for their 3rd round pick, but they selected Gerry Archer with the 3rd round pick. They would end up taking Bryant with the 4th round pick, but what I had heard was Todd Haley was particularly insistent upon drafting Archer. And it sounds like they had a consensus thought that they wanted Bryant in the 3rd round. Haley really wanted Archer, and it went Haley's way in that case. Fortunately for Haley, they got Bryant anyway, because Gerry Archer didn't exactly have a banner career. It's hard to project where everybody is going to go. Everybody gives an opinion on something, and a lot of it is really just going to end up being feel. And you're going to be, depending on how you want to classify wrong, there are guys that you're going to draft who aren't going to work out very well for a myriad reasons. It's not just because Todd Haley was wrong that Gerry Archer didn't do anything, and Gerry Archer didn't fail because Todd Haley thought he was a lot better than he was. There's a bunch of stuff that goes into that. So it's difficult to determine exactly who to take, but there's a lot of input from a lot of people. I think Baltimore is smart to involve the scouts. You want to go over those details and make sure that you have everything. I might argue, however, that does kind of create, paralysis by analysis, just in the sense that you can go over 1 trillion things about a player. The reality is you're not going to know until you get them out on the field, and that's kind of the rub of the whole thing. You've got to have as much information as possible, but be able to just make an instinctive call of whether or not he's going to adapt to your coaching style and he can play the game the way that you want him to play it. And he'll want to do that, and he'll stay hardworking after you pay him money. He'll fit in with the culture of your team. He'll fit in with the city. His family will be good with it. There are lots of things that will go into a young man's maturation and growth, and you can't control a lot of that. So having as much info as you can, I think, is probably the best approach.
My friend, always a pleasure. You know that. Thank you so much, as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
When car repairs get difficult,
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
we get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Crown Royal, Jack Daniels. Pickle Bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. Stock up for the Frozen Four on Thursday night at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. So, I've already explained the dead period, quiet period to you. Basketball's in a dead period.
Steve, we got Gerry Dulac.
Oh, sorry about that. But I just want to point out to everybody that the dead period ends Friday, and the quiet period for football extends for a period of time here in terms of how they go about and how they do it. The outstanding Gerry Dulac joins us. It's Masters time, and we might as well go to the master himself. My friend, welcome back.
Well, Steve, as you know, always a treat to be with you, and I can promise you that there is no dead time or quiet time with the Steelers or the NFL.
No.
As you well know, that's become, with the exception of about 3 to 4 weeks from late June to mid-July. Otherwise, when everybody's off, there is no quiet time for the Steelers, which is why I enjoy the advent of the Masters for sure.
Yes. Before I get to the advent of the Masters, is this essentially a timetable between now and day one of the draft, like this time frame here, as to what Aaron Rodgers decides?
You know, Steve, I can't even tell you that with certainty because I don't know. I've never gotten any feel or any sense from them, from the Steelers, that there's any kind of drop-dead date. And so while you would think it would have that they would want to get it done before the draft, I really don't think anything they do with Aaron Rodgers is going to dramatically affect their draft. And I say that because even if they don't sign him, I don't see them taking a quarterback in the first round. They have too many other things they probably need to address. And if they would sign Aaron Rodgers, where I would expect them to maybe look at a quarterback is the third round and probably more likely the fourth. And I say that because they don't have a number 2 pick. And I can't see them, I don't think where they're picking from, they have a grade on anybody in the first round. And in the third round, I mean, let's say they take a defensive lineman. Well, they do need a running back. I don't see them bringing in a quarterback as any type of competition, at least for now. And even if they don't sign Aaron Rodgers, Steve, they're going to sign a veteran quarterback because they always go into every year with 2 starter-capable quarterbacks because that's just the way they've always believed. If there's an injury, they want to have a guy who could come in and who has played. And so I'm not saying it's going to be Joe Flacco or Carson Wentz, but it's going to be somebody like that to back up Mason Rudolph at this point. And what I believe, Steve, is that they are all in 2026 on trying to find their quarterback, positioning themselves with draft picks, maybe a trade to get a higher pick, and then package all that in 2026 to move up where they need to go to make the deal to get a quarterback who they hope and feel is going to be their franchise guy. I don't see them doing that this year, right? Because right now all their eggs are in Aaron Rodgers' basket for 2025. And so that's the way I think they will proceed.
All right, the Masters itself, it's been an interesting early season to this stage because Rory McIlroy has done some things well, including winning the Players. And we all know this is the one he hasn't won. Is this about as geared into position for this tournament as he's been, in your opinion?
I don't think there's any question about it. I think in 2018 he came in on a bit of a roll, but he's never come to the Masters with 2 wins already under his belt. And, he won the Players, Steve, without really his A game. Missing a lot of fairways, missing enough greens, but he navigated his wedge game has improved. Everybody's talked about, and you saw it on a couple of those shots coming in, where he takes something off his irons to control the ball better, to flight it better. He's become a better putter, but his short game has been improved. And I've always felt that if he is at the top of his game, he's the best player in the world, and that includes Scottie Scheffler. Now, it's hard to argue with what Scottie Scheffler's done because his consistency in terms of being at the top is very impressive. It's Tiger-like. I'm not going to say it's Tiger, but it's Tiger-like, what we've seen the last 2 years. But, yes, I believe that Rory comes in with his best shot ever to do it. And just imagine, though, Steve, only 5 guys have won golf's Grand Slam. So the pressure on him, because he hasn't won a major now in, 11 years? Yeah. The pressure on him to win a major and win the Masters is probably the greatest on any player in the game. I mean, Jordan Spieth has a chance, could win the Grand Slam. Phil Mickelson, not here. Jordan Spieth has to win the PGA. Phil Mickelson has to win, a U.S. Open. I think I saw where there's 12 players who have 3 of the 4 majors who had a chance to complete the Grand Slam. None of them have done it, and only 5 have done it in history. So it shows you how hard it is to do. But the pressure on Rory to win the Masters and to end that major drought is greater than any pressure any player in the game right now faces. And that's what he has to deal with year after year, and that has to be a daunting task.
Well, when you're sitting there and Mickelson hasn't done it, and Tom Watson hasn't done it, and Arnold Palmer, of all people, hasn't done it, it's difficult to obviously do. That's why there's only 5. Nick Faldo hasn't done it. I mean, and these are all guys that have, Lee Trevino hasn't done it. These are all guys with 6 or more majors in their career haven't done it.
Right. And so that's what Rory's trying to do. And Steve, I don't think there is any doubt he is the most popular international player in America ever. Greg Norman in his time was very popular here for his graciousness, for his talent, for his flair. I think Rory has surpassed that because he's such a spokesman for the game, an ambassador for the game. He's a gentleman, tremendous talent, the greatest driver of the ball that I think the game has ever seen. Greg Norman has long held that title, but I think Rory surpasses him. And Americans pull for this guy, and so he would be an extremely popular champion.
Right, but he's not going to be the only guy out there, and that's one of the problems. You have to beat the course and eventually be better than the other guys trying to beat the course. Scotty Scheffler comes in. Since the injury, how well has he played?
Well, he hasn't been. His total strokes gained right now are as good as they were last year at this time, but his putting is not as good, and so that's kind of what's held him back. I found it curious, that of the, I think, 15 events, 14 events, only 5 Americans have won those events. The start of the tour has been dominated by international players. Scotty, of course, not one of them, hasn't won yet this year, but, he's won 2 of the last 3 here. There's certainly no reason he can't do it again, and everybody would love to see, kind of rooting to see the Rory Scheffler matchup down on Sunday afternoon. Now, we've seen that and talked about that for years with Tiger and Mickelson, and it never developed where they were in the hunt on Sunday in the final pairing for the green jacket. That's what everybody would love to see with the top 2 players in the world. But, there's some other guys behind them as well, and I think a guy that I have thought for since the start of last year, and actually since the end of the 2023 season, that I thought Ludwig Aubert would be a guy. I said then he's going to win a major. I thought he would win one last year. He was close here last year. I think he finished tied for 3rd. He's another guy to keep an eye on. He's a tremendous talent. And when he wins one, he's going to win several because he is very, very good. And so you have other guys behind him. Jordan Spieth. Nobody plays the Masters better than Jordan Spieth. He's the all-time leader in career scoring average. And Steve, when I watch him, I sit there and say, now I don't think this guy can ever win again because he's just so up and down. He seems to not be comfortable playing anymore. I know he always looked a little jittery and whatnot, but when he gets to Augusta, that stretch he had from 2014 to 2016, where 8 of 10 rounds he led the Masters. You haven't seen that from anybody. And so, while when he gets here, he's very good, but his game just hasn't been for the last couple of years. Just hasn't been sharp enough to win another major.
You and I know base talent because we've seen base talent emerge. But is it difficult to get a read on the live guys coming into this tournament because it's not the PGA Tour, which is on TV every week?
I don't think there's any question about that. You look at a guy like Joaquin Niemann, who's won twice already in 5 starts. He is a very talented player from Chile. Is he a guy? Could he come in here and win? Well, he's a guy worth keeping your eye on. But you look at what Bryson DeChambeau did last year in the majors.
Yeah.
Three top eights, and he won the U.S. Open. He was tied for sixth, I think, last year at the Masters. He was the first-round leader, if you recall, Steve, with a 65. I love to watch Bryson DeChambeau. He's the one guy I'm sure the PGA Tour wishes they had back. He is so good for the game of golf. He has so many followers, young followers on social media. He is great for the game, and he would be, just as he was with the U.S. Open, he would be a popular champion. John Rahm sits there and, quote, opines/whines about wanting to play in the big events. Well, he gets his chance, as a former Masters champ. He gets his chance here. And how do you discount Brooks Koepka? 2 Masters runner-ups and 5 majors. And to sit there and think that, he's not capable of contending, well, don't dismiss that for a second, because he could get out there. He's playing a little better. It is. You're right. It's just hard to judge, the competition on the LIV Tour, the motivation. But this is their opportunity. And I'm sure whatever they do on LIV, a lot of it in the last month or so is geared toward getting ready for this and the other majors.
In your opinion, as golf fans, are we going to have to live with this split for a while?
Yeah, it's looking more and more like there's not going to be some joint venture. Despite all the positive talk a couple months ago, they had the meetings at the White House, and it looked like that was going to be a step in the right direction. But I really don't see anything right now, Steve, based on what I hear and what I read, that there's going to be some kind of unification between the tours, and I think they're going to be destined to be split. I just can't imagine the players on the PGA Tour not so much not welcoming those guys personally, but just professionally speaking, guys who left their tour, grabbed the money, and now all of a sudden they're going to, at some point in time, going to say in some form or another that, it's okay to come back. And I just don't see that would be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of PGA Tour players. And I'm not sure, despite everything we've heard and read, I don't know. I just don't see that happening anytime soon.
I think most fans are incredibly familiar with Augusta National because it's played every year and it's appointment television. So for you, what are normally a couple of holes that you look at on day 4 that you think in your mind are always going to be potentially pivotal?
Well, if I would tell anybody on Sunday where to go, I would tell them go sit by 12T because you can watch 11 green.
Yeah.
The approaches on 11, you watch the tee shot on 12. While you can't really see the tee box on 13, you can see where it ends up, and you can't see the green on 13 from there, but you can see the approach shot itself. That would be the best, because after that, 15 green, 16 tees, obviously good, but but they're all individual holes. 15 goes down, 16's kind of hidden a little, 17 goes the other way, 18 goes up the hill away from 17. So it's hard to get one single spot, but that's why I say down in Amen Corner you can actually see 3 holes, and of course there are always 3 dangerous holes, 11 especially, 12 so dang tricky, and then 13 is so exciting. So that on Sunday is the best spot. Where I used to like to hang early, Steve, was always behind 2 green. You can see 3 tee shot, who decides to pull the driver on that shortish hole, who plays for position, and then you can walk 20 steps and see 7 green, and if you want to walk to the left, you could see 8's tee shot. So to me, I always thought that was a neat viewing area right there, because you could catch 4 holes basically by turning around, spinning, and taking 20, 25 steps.
Well, I will see you at the U.S. Open, by the way. So
I am glad to hear that, and of course, if I can help you in any way, you let me know, but that would be a real treat for me.
I think we can make that happen. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we can make that happen. My friend, always a pleasure. My best to your great family, and thanks for the time.
Steve, thank you. I thank you for those wishes, and we will catch up soon, my friend. Anytime.
That was great. The incredible Gerry Dulac, one of the best, period, in this business. He is to all the young people that aspire to do something really well in this business. He's a great inspiration to all of them. All right, we'll take a break. We will come back. More in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.